We're 1 minute out. 1 minute out. So if everybody could make your way in from the lobby if you haven't already and find a seat, we'll start in just 1 minute. All right, everybody, let's give a big evening round of applause for a good round of action pledges. Let's rock and roll.
Good afternoon. My name is Rupal Patel, and I'm the founder and CEO of Vocal ID. I'm a Health Innovation Fellow, Class 2. So we've been hearing a lot this week about getting proximate. And last night we heard from a young man named Daniel who talked about interacting with a boy with autism. And I want to make more of that happen with my venture called STEM for Social Change. I pledge to engage more than 1,000 people, young youth actually, in social action projects aimed at increasing awareness and empathy towards individuals living with disabilities. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Moorhead. I'm the President and Chief Technology Officer of FlexGen Power Systems as my first title. My second title, obviously the father of Will and Claire Moorhead, part of the youth program here today. My action pledge, and I'm a Henry Crown Fellow, my action pledge, I will change the energy infrastructure landscape by commercializing nuclear cold fusion energy, reaching over 1 billion people around the world by 2040. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jocelyn Mangan. I am the founder of Him for Her. I'm a Henry Crown Fellow. And my action pledge is, I will change the gender makeup of for-profit boards through networking dinners for executives and board members, where 30% of participating women will land a board seat within 24 months by 2028. And I would also like to congratulate Lisa Skeet Tatum, who's here with us tonight, and our first board placement.
Hi, I'm Govind Raj Athriraj from the first class of the India Leadership Initiative 2006. My action pledge is I will fight the growing menace of fake news with data and hard evidence and touch 50 million social media users through my online initiatives indiaspend.org and boomlive.in. Thank you.
Good evening, my name's Jill Violet, and I'm the founder of Playworks, where we believe in the power of play to bring out the best in everyone. I'm a Pahara class of 11, Oz goes to 11, and my pledge is to ensure that there is safe and healthy play for 7,000 schools, reaching 3.5 million kids across the United States by December 2020. I also have an additional pledge personally from this week to make sure that more play happens at the Aspen Institute. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Diane Eisner, Henry Crown Fellow, 2014 Bones and Elephants, and I work at Google.
I'm Ura from Nicaragua, an entrepreneur, and I'm from Cali.
So we have a collective action that emerged kind of spontaneously over the course of the last 4 days. And this is not an individual pledge, but something that is being actively co-created by many of the people here. Around the world, the safety of our fellows is too often compromised, whether natural disaster or humanitarian crisis. We pledge to create a platform to mobilize AGLN fellows into collective action. This is non-political, humanitarian, direct action by fellows for fellows. We will create a set of tools and communication protocols that make it easy to tap into the support network year-long, starting now with Nicaragua.
During these days, we created a bot. It's on Telegram. You can download it, and you will have access to all the information of what's happening in Nicaragua and how to help.
There's a link on the screen. It's a little bit long, but it's as short as we could get it. It's a link to the Google Doc with our collective pledge, a link to a list of everything that they need in Nicaragua, are asked for by our fellows, and all kinds of ways that you can help. There's also an email going out, so if you get it, please don't flag it as spam and click. Thank you.
I'm Christian Devers, and I've had the privilege of directing the youth camp. We have all been talking about fearless leadership the past 4 days, and the youth camp was no exception. We have engaged in rich conversation, formed lifelong friendships. The seminars offer deep, meaningful, cross-cultural dialogue, and we are very grateful for all the moderators that participated in the youth sessions. In an effort to work as a group and as individuals, we engaged in meaningful workshops with some prominent members of the AGLN family. Dan Porterfield conducted a guided journaling session that allowed each young person to identify what they are passionate about and how they might want to take action and create real change in their own communities. Aaron Huey and Justin Farrell facilitated an art and action workshop, and looking around the room, you will see creative art activists we have in the youth camp this year. The poster's on the wall. Thank you to Aaron and Justin for dedicating the afternoon yesterday to encourage the importance of creativity and originality in all we do. The youth camp would not have been a success without the incredible, fearless leadership of the amazing teachers that worked on the camp this week. Alexa, Alex, Dana, Ross, Gus, Julie, Abby, Cornelia, and Isabel. Please join me in thanking them. Please enjoy this video that provides a glimpse of the powerfully fearless youth voice.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from the youth camp experience so far is I've seen so many perspectives throughout the dialogues and the discussions. It's been really great to meet like all these people from different parts of the world and also what they think and how they think different from us.
The youth camp has made me look at fearlessness in a different way, taking the bold step, even though, it may seem too harsh, but it's what's right and what's needed for people.
I don't know if the youth camp has made me feel different about fearlessness, but it's definitely just brought to mind that like everybody's scared of something, even if it's just like a tangible thing that is easy to get over or something that is an irrational fear. Everybody's scared of something.
Biggest takeaway is that there's a lot that I think that I should do that I don't actually put into action. Makes me more aware of it.
I've had a few ideas before coming to camp, but this has helped me like nurture them and really have a definite idea of what I'm doing and what I'm going to help other people do.
The youth camp has taught me a lot about how you can be fearless in different ways. So I have a lot of opinions, and I've learned a lot of other people's opinions here, and it's very useful. Enjoy the company that you have, because it's not often that you find people like this.
If you have a fear, like if you're scared of the dark, then you shouldn't be, because you're stronger than the dark and you're like stronger than your fears.
Part of what the youth camp experience does so well is like puts you together with so many brilliant minds and like people who think differently. And I think that's also like being fearless has to do with not being afraid to speak your truth or the actual truth and speak your ideas. And it also has to do with respecting others. So it's not only to respect your own ideas, but to respect others as well.
I think that fearless leadership is not necessarily not having fear, but taking that fear, seeing that you have it, knowing that you have it, and then still going on with whatever you're doing.
Fearlessness means courage to me.
Fearlessness means empowering other people.
What fearless means to me is standing up.
Speaking the truth even when others might differ with you.
Be honest with yourself.
Fearlessness is being bold.
Fearlessness means attacking your fears head on.
That was great. I'm sure you all want to join me in thanking one more time the leaders of the youth camp and all the participants, these brave children. What a great, incredible group of inspirational young people, so full of energy, enthusiasm, and great ideas. Fresh eyes often bring the best ideas. This group certainly didn't disappoint. I was so impressed when I joined a session with 12-year-olds that John Daisy led. I found the group charming, honest, openly vulnerable, to be 12 years old again, and insightful about the human condition. You are Gen Zers, did you know that? And you have an entirely unique perspective on life. You are colorblind, you are gender blind, and you value authenticity above everything else. And you fill me with optimism, and I am now more calm about the future of our society because I know someday you children are going to lead us. Now it's up to all of you to take what you've learned and put it to good use. This week has given the children the tools, but it's given the grown-ups the tools too, and the confidence to step into leadership roles in your schools, in your communities, and all the need we see in this challenged world of ours. But the work part of the week is over. And in one sense, it's a sad thing to see because we're closing the door on 4 days of lively and stimulating debate, as well as bidding farewell to friends and associates. It has been a privilege and an honor for me to be part of the gathering of such important, eminent people on our planet. As with all such events, our minds have been assailed by a torrent of ideas, information, and interpretations. It'll be days or weeks before we can sift through everything we've learned and consolidate our own personal perspective. And then you'll see that something you learned this week may pop up in your mind months or a year from now when sparked by some challenge in your life. It will give you courage. In this forum, if this forum in any way enhances our individual and collective ability to lead without fear, then it can truly be deemed a huge success. The openness and the love, and caring that I experienced in the couple of sessions that I attended was staggering. Stuart, we made a good choice in supporting this fabulous conference. We have to get you into one of the sessions, don't you think? Okay. Next year, promise. Okay, you said. All right. But we're switching gears now, and it's all about having fun. And I have one last fun task to perform. The theme of this week has been fearless leadership, as you know, and it's my real pleasure to introduce you to a truly fearless leader, the new president and CEO of the Aspen Institute, Dan Porterfield. Many of you have met Dan in a few of the sessions this week, but I want to take this opportunity to formally welcome him. Not only is he a remarkable leader, he's an even better person, and we're really lucky to have him, and we're also very lucky to have Karen. And wait till you meet the kids. When we began the search process, we stated publicly that we were looking for a leader who could embrace our mission and be an agent of change. In Dan Porterfield, we found an exceptional, dynamic figure who will do that and more. His varied and distinguished career is a study in staying true to one's values and commitment in the open exchange of ideas. Those are the pillars of the mission of the Aspen Institute, pillars that have withstood the test of time and will carry us into the future under Dan's stewardship. Over the last 7 years, Dan served as president of Franklin and Marshall College, a leading national liberal arts college founded by none other than Benjamin Franklin in 1787. And under Dan's leadership, F&M set school records for applications, fundraising, and fellowships. He's also a scholar of English, and he taught literature courses dealing with human rights, education, and social justice. Perhaps his greatest gift to F&M was Dan's commitment to develop the Next Generation Initiative Talent Strategy. Because Dan understood the core values and mission of the college, and through research and listening to the various stakeholders, and by the way, he's a marathon listener, he was able to translate and project those values in a way that spoke uniquely to the students, the parents, and the funders. I have been through that research project that he worked on, and how he took those findings and turned it into such an enormous success. The college tripled the percentage of low-income students and more than doubled the percentage of students of color. The Washington Post described it as a recruiting revolution. He's a former Rhodes Scholar. I guess you need to be a Rhodes Scholar to get in here. And a recipient of the 2016 White House Champion of Change Award. Dan also spearheaded the American Talent Initiative, a national Aspen Institute College Excellence Program. The initiative has a goal of enrolling 50,000 high-achieving, low-income students in leading institutions by 2025. It's not an exaggeration to say that Dan has led the national push to open college doors to high-achieving, low-income students. And he has made F&M the proving ground for recruiting poor and minority students, and equally important, ensuring that they are successful. Having Dan at the helm of the Aspen Institute is a huge coup. The Aspen Institute is committed to tackling challenging problems and finding innovative ideas to resolve them. With Dan's guidance, we'll continue to offer something that both America and the world need ever more urgently. The Aspen Institute will continue to foster greater human achievement by enabling the world's leading thinkers and doers to tackle the toughest social, economic, and political problems of the day together. I knew from the first time I met Dan that he possessed not only the skills and experience we were looking for, but the vision, the drive, and the passion. I know I speak of everyone here to say that we are thrilled that you, Dan, are leading our team. I can think of no better person to take the reins at this critical moment in the Institute's life cycle, poising us to address the growing needs of our society. Please join me in welcoming Dan Porterfield.
Really? This is the way it goes?
Go. No, you're going to see. You take out these.
Come on, sit here.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Linda, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I think my dad would have, well, my mom would have, she would have actually believed it. My dad would have, my dad would have loved it. Thank you for all you've done, Stuart, for all you've done to make this possible. Also, I want to right now call out and thank all of the staff of the Aspen Institute and all the staff of the Aspen Meadows, everybody who planned a session, who moderated a session, who cooked a meal, who cleaned up a room, who arranged transportation, all led by Tommy Loper, who I think is right over there. And let's have some fun.
Excellent.
Dan, you and I have had the good fortune of knowing each other for years, and I'm thrilled to welcome you into the AGLN family.
Thank you, Victor.
One of the reasons is that wherever you've gone, you've brought an abiding commitment to social justice. We've got the largest number of youth participation in the Action Forum, and I know that you first got involved in social justice issues as a teenager. Could you please just share with us what catalyzed you into that action?
Sure, thank you. And it's great to have the kids right up here in the front. Thank you all. Good to see you again after our journaling the other day. And I think I was about your age when I first got exposed to social injustice. And by that I just mean things that weren't right. You know, the way that the community was organized in Baltimore City, where I grew up, just wasn't right. And the big problem was there was segregation. White people lived in one place and African Americans lived in another. And my family was unique. My parents were kind of like writers and playwrights, and they wanted to really make change in society. They were 60s kids. And so they moved us into an entirely African American neighborhood. We're the only white family. And it was a great neighborhood. And we had just a normal, good life in that neighborhood until Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And my parents were really thrown into turmoil by all of the social anguish of the time. They got divorced, and we moved into my father's mother's house. She had just died. And that was about maybe 8 blocks away, right around the corner. That was all white. Not one African American lived there. Most of the people had just bought these row houses for the first time in their lives with all the money they had. And they worked at places called McCormick Spices and Black & Decker, which made drills, and this place called Sparrows Point, which did shipping. We're all hardworking families. We moved in. My mom was young, a single mother. She started going to college at night while my sister and me went to school in the day. And, I didn't think much about that neighborhood until maybe a year or two into it, the first African family. And they weren't even African American, they were African. There was a doctor, I think from Kenya or Nigeria, with his wife and 2 little kids. They moved in. And about, a significant number of people in that neighborhood tried to make them move out. They threw tomatoes at their house. They wrote horrible things on the sidewalks of their house or on the front steps. They called them names when they pulled up, or they gave them the silent treatment, or they stared at them funny. They made them feel like outcasts. I know that some of you last night talked about how your own sensibility was awakened when you saw someone in your community treated like an outcast, and how that inspired you to act. I really admire that. And I think that was part of my story too, added by this fact that my mom, who was, as I said, a single mom, she didn't, throw tomatoes at their windows and break their windows. She went up and brought them casseroles and cookies and welcomed them to the neighborhood. And other people were saying, go away. You shouldn't be here. And she was saying, you belong here. Well, over the course of a few months, some of those families that had thrown the tomatoes decided to live somewhere else and got up and moved and left these houses they were very proud that they had bought and moved to some other place in the state of Maryland. And every time somebody moved, the family that moved in was African American. And the neighborhood got better. It actually got stabilized. It was really sad to think that people would be either so fearful or so discriminatory or so hateful that they would first try to drive someone away, and then after that, they would just get up and leave themselves. It was so counterproductive. But interestingly, this neighborhood got much better once it was a truly integrated neighborhood, and it still is one today. And I had like a great childhood after that happened. The big lesson for me was twofold. It was really from my mom's example. First, every now and then we have to decide what kind of person we're going to be. We just have to choose. Circumstances make it such that we can either say, I'm against that or I'm for that, but we have to choose. We have to be fearless. We have to do the right thing. The second lesson that I got from that, from my mom's example, was that people like me, who are white in America, have to decide what kind of a white person we're going to be. And by that I mean, we have to understand that people that are born white in America have advantages and privileges and opportunities that others don't get. And we have to make the active effort to level the playing field and promote justice. So this is Victor Reynoso, and he went to one of the greatest schools in America. He went to Georgetown University, like me, like my wife Karen, who's right there, and my daughter Caroline and Lizzie, two are there. So you should all introduce yourselves, before you ask a question, just so that the audience knows who you are and what great thing you've done to be one of these leaders through the Aspen Institute.
I'm James Abraham from India, and I think they picked my name out of a hat. So every time I come here, I'm awestruck, and I just feel blessed to be here.
Yeah, that was great, though, because you went in my closet and took my shirt.
That's true.
Actually, it was not your closet, it was my closet.
Hey! Actually, it is Claudia.
Yeah. So I'm Claudia Salmeron from the Central American Initiative. I have the privilege of being the managing director. And I really want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
But go ahead.
I'll go first?
Yes.
So my name is Amigro. I'm from Israel, but I lived in China for the last 2 years, and now I'm moving to LA, so I'm not sure where I'm from. But I'm a Henry Crown Fellow, part of the Bones and Elephant, and one of the moderators here.
Cool.
So I'm going to go first.
Okay.
We've all warmed up.
Yep.
We've tried everything. You've been in the sessions.
Yes.
And so let's get down to it.
Okay.
I want to know what your fears have been, but first I want to know where you have failed.
Okay.
And to that, maybe you can tell us a specific story in your lifetime.
Okay. I'll talk to the kids again for a second. Fears, I think always in my life at different times I felt the fear of not being accepted or not measuring up or not being perfect. I felt those fears. Have you ever felt those fears? That's a part of life. And somebody, one of you said in the video, we confront our fears. That's what fearlessness is. So you're not going to change that. Society makes us doubt ourselves, and we have to be able to then say, okay, but how am I going to fortify myself against those socially created feelings? Now, failure. Nothing wrong with failure. In fact, I don't think anything great has ever been accomplished without failure on the pathway. And I could probably point to lots of different moments in my own life, but I'll point to one just because Claudia's from the country of Nicaragua, and I went to the country of Nicaragua too. So let me say something about, I'll ground it in that. When I was a college kid, as my wife Karen knows, I was really into working with children who were supervised by the courts of Washington, D.C., and were incarcerated in what are called juvenile detention facilities or in group homes. And I created a bunch of different programs, just like these ventures that you all do, that involve my friends from college working in the homes and schools and facilities where kids were. We worked with a lot of kids. And those programs, in fact, still exist today. Just like the ventures you're doing. You know, if you build them right, they will have a long life, well beyond the time after which we work in them. And I think I was pretty good at that. And I was in college, and I went to a school where there was it was Georgetown University, there was some really influential teachers in my life. And one of them was a Jesuit priest, and he was building these interesting programs in the country of Nicaragua. And the graduates of the school were going to Nicaragua and going out and living in rural communities and trying to make themselves useful. And so I had this thing I was really good at, working with court-supervised kids and helping them not lose the only lives they have. But I also had this priest and role model who was really into Nicaragua. And I thought how important it was to care about Nicaragua, but also how much I liked being the idol of my professor's eyes, how much I liked that. That's just called vanity. We all have it. we all have it. We all sometimes want to see ourselves reflected in someone else's eyes and say, that's me, what they see, even if it's not us. So I signed up and went to Nicaragua. Mind you, I didn't know how to speak Spanish.
What year?
1983. 1983 was a busy time in Central America. There's a whole series of conflicts and violence and some war in some parts of Nicaragua. And I was placed in a village that was at the foot of a volcano that had erupted like 10 years before, and it was black ash that deep. These people were living in such poverty, no running water, no electricity, no schools for their kids. It was just working on the farm, out in the fields. They'd go out and they'd cut this stuff called yucca with machetes. I learned how to cut yucca. But I was supposed to be there to help. And the simple fact of the matter is that the main reason I went was because I wanted to be admired. And so I was there to help, but I didn't have that much to offer, to be honest about it. It was kind of funny that there was this gringo who was 6 feet tall and couldn't speak a word and constantly got sick from eating the food the wrong way and, just felt homesick all the time. It was a source of humor, but I actually didn't add a thing, really, to this community called Los Claros. And one time I was lying on a bed, and it was there's so much poverty. I was lying on a bed, and the rain was coming in through this little stick house I was a part of. And underneath the bed, suddenly all these pigs ran in. And their pigs were all under the bed, shaking and scratching and snorting and making noises and doing other things. And I was lying on this bed with the rain coming on me and the pigs under me. And I had to admit to myself right then that I was a fool. I had to admit that. The pigs made me realize that. There was a mother breastfeeding 6 little piglets under that bed. In the morning, I looked under the bed. It's called tijera. I looked under the bed. There was the pants, the only pair of pants I had, under the mother. She'd think, what am I going to do the rest of the 2 weeks I was in this community, walk around with tattered, pig-eaten pants? Luckily, they were okay. But I had to admit, right there, that I didn't yet have enough to offer in that community. So it felt like a failure. And I felt sad and a little bit depressed when I came back from Nicaragua after a few months doing that, and I felt like I hadn't made an impact. So what's the lesson you can learn? That's the thing. You have to ask, any experience, what can you take away? For me, the takeaway was there was some vanity that led me to go down there, and secondly, I had to get good. So I was back in Washington, D.C. after this experience, and another priest says to me, there's a huge number of Central American immigrant families in Washington, D.C. who walked or rode on the top of trains all the way up from Mexico to get away from civil war in the country of El Salvador, a neighbor of Nicaragua. Would you help us work with those families? So I said, sure, I need something to do. So I went out and started working in the homes and schools of all of these recently arrived immigrant families with kids who were scared to death of living in America and who didn't have any money and who didn't have legal status and who had all kinds of different health problems because where they were coming from was so poor they hadn't gotten treated the way they needed to. They hadn't gotten vaccination shots. They hadn't had dental work. These are incredible people, and they wanted Americans to come into their homes and help their kids learn. And the thing was, because I'd been in Nicaragua and living in the village and had pigs under my bed and chopped yucca and spoke a little Spanish and understood the rhythms of rural life and saw how much little kids in Nicaragua respected their grandparents and went to the wells where they pulled water up by hand, 600 feet deep, saw people building those wells. I understood those people from El Salvador, what they missed by having to move to Washington, D.C. And even though I had failed in Nicaragua, I had gained experience that made me the best friend and ally they could have.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, Dan, I've looked at your interview at the Ideas Festival. One of the comments you made was that the best years of the Aspen Institute are still ahead of it.
Yeah.
So as you look at that, what are the specifics that you see? What's the role that you see the Aspen Institute playing going on?
So what is the Aspen Institute? That's the first question. It is this great global force of good that's marshaling the energy and talent, passion, vision, experiences of people all across this country and all around the world in order to do what? To try to improve the societies that we all live in, to try to promote flourishing and growth among young people, to try to make governments work well, to make sure that businesses are able to provide for their employees the way Linda and Stuart do, to be able to create a society that's strong and vibrant. That's what the Aspen Institute is all about. It works in so many different ways. Everything from leadership development to helping colleges improve how they work, to developing strategies to grow jobs in rural communities, to empowering entrepreneurs around the world, to recruiting people like the great journalist David Brooks, who's going around the country right now in America trying to create a dialogue of healing with so much division. Aspen works in so many different ways, but it's always about improving the human condition. The reason our best days are in front of us is because we have talent, because we have a room here and lots of other rooms full of people with vision, and because the world needs us. Right now, this world with so much change, exponentially changing fast, with so much opportunity for good, but also so much anger and division, needs non-aligned, people-serving, generous outreach from the nonprofit institutions that really are all about helping promote the human good. And so we have just nothing but opportunity ahead of us. For me, then, the challenge, or the risk, I guess, of taking this job would be that we don't maximize our opportunity. That's what keeps me up awake at night. That I might be in partners with you 5 or 6 years from now, and we're still good. We're still good, but the world needs us that much more in 5 or 6 years. We've got to get better. We have to have more ventures, more impact, more focus, more partners, more idealism, more hope, more young people, more commitment to making this world a better place. And the big challenges of the day, like political enmity, like climate change, like the changing nature of work and the changing of all kinds of opportunities for people to be able to work if they don't have the right education. If we don't work on those problems, then the world's going to be in a sorry state. It's up to us.
One of the, earlier in the week, I had a chance to talk to Paul Anderson, to your point about the global reach. And he mentioned something that was interesting. He said, if you draw a map of the world and put a pin somewhere, that point would always have a need. And also, within spitting distance of that point, there is somebody connected to Aspen. We're actually a global network.
Yeah.
And you had talked a little bit about the network. Can you talk about what you see in the power of that?
So what is a network? It's a group of people and institutions and organizations that gather up and say, we're kind of in it together, and we have nodes of activity where lots of big work is happening, and we try to make sure that the work at those nodes is impactful and makes a difference. And then there's a black spot where there's nothing, no node. We go create a node and go from there. Are you sending me a message? Oh, my notes fell. What's your name? Well, Kat, thank you for telling me my notes fell. So a network is a way of gathering people together on their own voluntary choice to come together to create nodes of activity and then to build new nodes, like the one we just heard announced with a focus on Nicaragua. Fantastic. That's what networks do. They strengthen the activity of all the different partners together so we can have collective impact, but they also marshal our resources and deploy them in new areas where the need is urgent. That was so inspiring to me to hear. You know, here you are from Nicaragua. You must have been a part of that. That by sharing the story of what's happening in the country right now, a good deal of turmoil, that and a real need for people to invest in the company, in the country, you were able to get some of your friends and colleagues to say, let's do that together. And let's not do it just in Nicaragua, let's do it in other places. So that, to me, that's what networks do. They're not top down, they're not hierarchically driven. There's not one person in control of a network. It's not like a prison where the warden's in charge. A network is much more decentralized. There's more freedom, there's more flexibility, there's more agility, there's more cultures, there's more sharing. Institutions that build great networks will be the difference makers in our society. They'll be the difference makers. Institutions that have networks but don't use them will be the institutions that don't realize their promise. So we've got this great network, and we need to use it. And by the way, I want to take a moment to recognize Peter Reiling, who's here, who helped to build the Aspen Global Leaders Network. And he's always going to be a part of this network, but right now there's 3,000 people in the Aspen Global Leaders Network, which means there'll be probably 3,250 next year, which means there'll be 3,500, and then there'll be 3,750, and then there'll be 4,000, and eventually there'll be 6,000, and there'll be 10,000. We have to organize ourselves to deploy that human talent because it's growing, and the power of the growth is one thing, but even more important is to direct ourselves so that we make impact.
So Dan, I believe that you're the luckiest man on earth.
I think so, but you don't even know Karen Hurling yet.
Not yet, but I'll get to know you later. And the reason why I'm saying it is that the people in the room here and all the people that are not are literally the best of the best. You have the best army that any general can have. And we ask our fellows, and congratulations, you just became a fellow. Yeah. We ask our fellows to make a pledge. Yeah. And I would actually ask you to make a pledge, and I would like you even to point you. I want to hear the big vision.
Yeah.
As high, as far as it gets. Because we need it.
All right, I'm going to make two pledges. Good. Because one I can report on next year, and one we're going to be reporting on every year. Yep. So first of all, the sort of specific pledge. The headquarters of the Aspen Institute is in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And we do great work all around the country, all around the world. But we need a breakthrough project in Washington, D.C. So my pledge is that by working with all the employees of the Aspen Institute based in Washington, D.C., we will come up with a breakthrough concept that improves quality of life in Washington, D.C. and can be assessed in measurable and demonstrable terms. Now, my big pledge, I don't believe I can make alone. I think we have to make it together. So the big pledge is that the Aspen Institute will become, over the next decade, the single greatest force for good of any organization, nonprofit, government, or private, that exists, because we will mobilize the power of this remarkable network in this room and beyond as a force for good. They didn't tell me I was going to make a pledge, but it's funny. Last night I was lying in bed. I was thinking, what are these guys going to do? They're going to want to know my pledge.
Dan?
Karen said a good pledge. Karen said a good pledge would be just that I was a little more responsive in the morning when I wake up, because I'm a bit of a zombie. But that's another pledge too.
Washington, D.C. may be easier.
Yeah.
Dan, so you have a way of inspiring people around you. How do you catalyze those around you? What's your strategy?
I don't think I do. I don't inspire people. I think people inspire themselves. And so I think that great leadership is about reaching out to people and saying, let's be partners. Let's do it together. Let's find the greatness within ourselves. But I don't actually think that one person can make another person do anything. I think that what you can do is tap their idealism and desire to be a difference maker, to be a great human being, and then see them and say, I see you, keep going. That's how I think it works.
That's your strategy?
That's my strategy. I can say, I see you. Say, I see you. Nobody in this room needs me to tell them what to do. Nobody does. What you need me to do, I believe, is to see you as you are cultivating the impact that you want to make, and then perhaps to be able to show others what you're doing in a way that makes your enthusiasm and impact contagious, so that all kinds of allies rush behind you. That, I think, is a good role for me. But actually telling people, hey, get with it, get out there, make a difference, forget it. It doesn't work that way. We have to draw on people's sense of self-regard to be a difference maker and just see it and applaud it.
Sounds fair.
Yeah.
So How can we help you?
I think that you in particular, I don't think that's the right question. I think the question is, how can I help you? That's what I think is needed. How can the Aspen Institute organize our work in such a way that people that are working at a variety of levels in society feel the embrace and support of the Aspen Institute? That, I think, is the question. For me, I feel as if, down the road, looking ahead a little bit, part of my responsibility is to go out and cultivate resources so that we're able to bring to bear more resources for change makers like the four of you and all in this room, especially you on this side of the room, the kids. We have to be able to bring more resources to the table. I think that's my job. I think that you can help me by telling me what you're doing that's making the most impact so that I can then go out and brag about it and tell people what you're doing. And maybe you can also help me by believing in yourself. If you believe in yourself, that helps me to be able to help you. Seriously, if you don't believe in yourself, kids, then it's hard for people to help you make the impacts you can make. But if you do believe in yourself, people like me are going to run up and want to help you. We'll be inspired by you.
So there were, just to answer that question of how can you and the Institute help us, there's a part of your story that we haven't heard. I want to go back a little bit, and I think it connects to this question. Ventures. You talk about us going out there and making, one of the ways we do this is by making the pledges and doing projects. You have a history of doing this yourself. Can you share a little bit about what those were and why and how they became successful?
Okay, so first of all, there's no I in the word ventures, right? There's no I. So every venture reflects the collective work of all the partners that say, let's get the job done. So I'll mention a couple things, but it's always about we. Okay, when I was in college, and you guys aren't, well, when I was in high school, I coached a bunch of teams in Baltimore City that had African-American kids and white kids playing together. And we played in leagues where every other team was all white or all African-American. I was 15 years old when I started doing that. And that was about more than basketball. I love that thing over there, by the way, that poster. It says, shoot hoops, not guns. That's what it was about. It was about shooting hoops to make change. When I was in college, I worked to develop some programs first for court-supervised kids and then for for immigrant families in DC. After that, I taught in prisons. It was never me alone. It was a group of people. Later in my career, we had some of the work that Linda talked about, where Franklin and Marshall College said, we want more talent, more economic opportunity in our schools, so we're going to triple our financial aid budget. We're going to recruit from schools and programs around the country that are preparing low-income kids for college success. We're going to find those kids, love them, empower them, help them achieve all their goals. And it's been exciting to see it happen. So I've been around and a part of work that has made a demonstrable difference. So what do I think is important? 1, collect partners. 2, set goals. 3, be undeterred, work hard, be optimistic, get good. 4, when you've had some success with whatever you've done, amplify it. Don't work within a little bucket where the bucket's on top and you have a beautiful little light of change making under that bucket. Throw the bucket away, push out the results of what you're doing, inspire other people to do what you're doing or to do their version of what you're doing. You don't have to run the world with all the things all reporting to you, but you should be catalyzing your best, most impactful work in such a way that other people then take your lessons learned and in their communities do it their way, in a way that makes a difference. That's something I think is important for Aspen to get really good at, broadcasting the impactful work that all of you are doing so that more people believe that hope is real when we organize ourselves for action and get results. And that just takes the willpower to go out and find success stories and promote them. The last thing I would say is that any great initiative should be done in partnership with the people it's supposed to benefit. That the simple fact of the matter is there's lots of well-intentioned people that show up on the site but don't really make a difference. And that's why, and Linda, thank you for calling me a marathon listener. It does take marathon listening to frame a problem properly in partnership with those you want to help. It isn't just sort of instant. And that being willing to engage in conversation with people about their real life stories, how they see the world, what they see as the opportunities they want to have, is so much better than coming in as a know-it-all and saying, hey, I'm here to help.
Dan, I want to take you back to your own personal story at the beginning, and you highlighted how you lived and experienced the racial inequities and economic inequities, and it's a thread that you've tried to tackle at every place. And these are threads that continue to persist for us in a 21st century society. Is that something that you're also bringing to your leadership here at the Aspen Institute?
Yes. How it will work out depends on what you want to do, what you're already doing, and what the great colleagues in DC that are doing in all kinds of ways are doing. But yes, every generation of people, I think, but certainly Americans, must confront the reality that identity-based discrimination is deep in the human condition. There's no denying that. I don't care where you live or work. Identity-based discrimination is there. How do we deal with it? By confronting it and by pointing a finger at the people like my mom who live their lives in such a way that they say no to discrimination. And at the same time you're saying no, you have to reflect a little bit about some of the subtler forms of discrimination or prejudice that we may hold that we haven't yet emptied out of ourselves. It's like starting those conversations on inequity and injustice and racism and homophobia and every other form of prejudice is hard. The first time you do it, it hurts. It's like going to the gym if you haven't exercised for a year. You come home and every muscle is aching. We have to build our muscles for those conversations about inequity and injustice and sexism and racism and all other forms of ism. And we have to do that with a commitment to listening. That's the key. You have to listen. And again, to the kids that are here, you already get this because I heard some of the things that you said last night. But just remember that you never complete that work. Never. You commit to it constantly, everything we do.
Dan?
Yes.
I have a question for you.
She's scary when she says Dan.
She's scary when she calls any of our names.
Yeah, she's a pro. Be careful. Yeah.
So, inquiring minds want to know, why did you take this job? Why do you want to be our leader?
Thank you. So I was doing something I loved, being the president of Franklin and Marshall College, which is one of the greatest schools in America. And it has, by the way, 40 international students every single year in our class of 600 who come on scholarship who are lower moderate income international students. So we have these amazing kids from Bosnia, from China, from Central America, from the Middle East. Incredible. And then it's got a domestic student body that's really, really becoming one of the most inclusive. The faculty are tremendously committed to student learning. It's in a beautiful part of the country. It's a great place. And it is a great feeling, and kids, you should want to do this. It's a great feeling to be the president of a college. You know, walk across that campus and see people learning every day and making new knowledge and playing sports and acting and singing and being in student government and helping in their city. It's a great, great feeling. And I really loved it. And my wife and I lived in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for 7.5 years with our kids. It was a fantastic thing. So why would the Aspen Institute actually recruit me is the question I would ask. And there's reasons. And so I had to reflect, well, is there a fit of my talent with the needs of the Aspen Institute? If it's not a fit, you have to say no. Even if it feels like exciting to be recruited, you have to have the fit. You have to, because everybody in a leadership role, you have to subordinate yourself to the institution you're leading. If the fit's not there, you can't subordinate yourself to something that's not, in line with your values. I love the impact of the Institute. I love the people associated with it. I've worked with it. So I knew what a great place it was, but I had to reflect a big question. The big question I had to ask was, am I ready to give up something I love to do something else? And the thing is, if you don't love your work, no one ever wants you for another job. You need to love your work. If you don't love your work, you need to redefine your work and find a way to love it. You have to love your work. You add to your work. So I felt I loved what I was doing so much because we were making so much impact for kids and schools around the country that I wanted to take that love to another level and possibly be able to experience that feeling of love working at a broader societal and even global level. But I had to give up something I was good at and really loved to do it. And that's something that you can be a little bit afraid of. Fearless leadership is leaving behind something that you know you're good at to try something else because you think you can serve in a new way in that new venture.
I see we're We're going to be running out of time, so
All right,
rapid
all right.
fire.
So we're going to do lightning questions.
Lightning round.
We know the first answer. Morning person or night person?
Night person. Night person.
Favorite phrase?
Favorite phrase?
Okay, what animal would you be?
I'm looking at my colleague Christian, who's worked with me for a number of years. Favorite phrase? Yeah. Okay. Here's my favorite phrase. Okay. All right. This is it. It's a clause. Actually, it's a sentence. It could be a paragraph. The young dream and the old teach.
Oh, deal.
And in that mystery comes a tomorrow that we who are older will never see, but will have helped to create in the minds and hearts of our students.
Powerful. We should end it there, but let's make it more fun.
Yeah.
If your last meal was today, what would you eat?
I would have a giant piece of Karen Hurling's cappuccino cheesecake. I would have a big mint chip milkshake. There's this place called Thomas Sweets in Washington, D.C. They have blend-ins. I would have a big blend-in, coffee, ice cream, strawberries, and chips. Okay. I would have a bowl. I would have a bowl of peanut butter cups.
You can't eat all of that.
Yes, I could.
So
I would have a cherry pie with whipped cream all over it, and I'd have a big cappuccino on top.
So now that you've eaten all of
Yes,
that,
yeah.
what type of animal would you be?
I would definitely be a turtle. Absolutely.
A turtle.
Yes, I love turtles so much. I love the shell so much. I love the paws. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I would be a box turtle, though. I wouldn't be a sea turtle. I would only eat plants. I couldn't see myself eating roly-polies and worms.
So we can have that conversation on the side.
If you want.
What would be the title of your autobiography?
We create the education we seek.
All right.
Okay, awesome.
Excellent.
Okay, we have one last exercise. This, the theme of our 4 days here together was fearless leadership, and that means we know our fear, face it. You guys know where this is going, right? So, and we overcome it. But one of the great things about this network fellowship is that we overcome our fears together. So we asked Dan what his greatest fear was. His greatest fear is dancing on stage. Move your chairs back.
Yeah.
All of you get up.
Get up! Get up!
And we're going to keep it light and easy. There are some Indians spread out. We're going to be doing a little Bhangra dance. Hit the music.
I feel my... hold me up. My stomach is turning.
This is very simple. Bhangra dancing is on the shoulder. Just in the shoulder. We're going to wait. Just keep it going. Yeah, here we go. Oh, look at that. Dan up front. There we go.
Dan, go up front.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, excellent. Okay, now.
No.
The music's going to change. We're going to sweep the ceiling and sweep the floor. Sweep the ceiling, sweep the floor. Sweep the ceiling, sweep the... Okay, now move your legs in.
Oh my God! Okay.
All right, awesome.
Watching.
Thank you. Great job. Great job. Great job. Thank you.
And now we're going to welcome up onto the stage David Langstaff, the Interim Executive Vice President for Leadership and Seminars here at the Aspen Institute. Let's give him a big hand.
So what am I supposed to do? Yesterday we said there was a small memorial in the Isaacson Center for one of the great moderators, not of AGLN, but really through the Aspen seminars, Pete Thigpen. And I had an opportunity to speak. But before I spoke, Eric Motley spoke. And Eric was just beautiful and eloquent and just caught the mood just right. I think Eric is here somewhere. And I made a note to myself, don't follow Eric Motley again with anything you have to say. So I don't know why I'm here following Dan Porterfield, not only with words, but with dance. But thank you. So I'm the bridge between where we've been and where we're going. And Dan will fill in the latter. And I want to just say a few words in closing, but first, I've got the privilege of letting all of us say thank you to a number of people. So first to Dan, and James and Ami, Claudia, and Victor for the panel we just had, and the brilliant dancing, which I hope will go viral. Also want to thank Karen for lending us Dan, and not just lending us Dan, but joining Dan, and really appreciate your being here. All of you who have made action pledges, and I note that it's not too late. There's still cards to be put on the board. So those of you who have not, you can still get up there and do it. And now also then to our sponsors. And we begin with Linda and Stuart. I mean, we wouldn't be here without you. And just take a look around this room. And thank you. Also, the other sponsors and underwriters that Tommy mentioned at the beginning of the week, which I won't repeat now, but I do want to call out Sarah Borgman with the Skoll Foundation, Meg Sullivan and Eric Greenberg with Paul Hastings, Ann McNulty, her family, and April Age and colleagues with the McNulty Foundation. Thank you all. And we hope all of you, all of the fellows, will stay engaged with our partners who are there to offer their support to our work, your work, year-round. I also want to thank Margot Pritzker, who can't be here, is in England, and Bill Mayer for their continued and unwavering support and their leadership and mentorship. Thank you. I want to thank our lead discussants, the workshop presenters, and our brave peer consultancy presenters, and moderators, with special recognition of Stace Lindsay and Dancy Glover for their preparation of the moderators. I also want to call out the legendary Keith Berwick, who will celebrate his 90th birthday in a couple of months. To the Aspen Institute, the communications team led by our new Executive Vice President, Amy DeMaria, and Farabi Cobb. I don't know if they're here, but hope so. The conference services team, Deb Murphy and Dulcie Gregory, and more than 40 members of their staff and volunteers. Thank you all. And as Dan noted, the Aspen Meadows Resort staff, led by Jason McEachin and Scott Kenner, and over 190 colleagues that have been supporting us this week. Thank you. And now, I want you to see our extraordinary AGLN team with special thanks to Olivia O'Neill. So, please, all of you, come on up. Join me on stage so that you can be recognized. All the rest of you as well. So we have Tommy Loper, Willow Darcy, Phil Javalena, Dancy Glover, Shaquila Williams, Chris Veazey, Kid Dewey Solomon, Alexis Ettinger, Sambra Wundamagan, Julie Song of the Middle East Leadership Initiative, Janice Wilkins and Kay Oken of Liberty Fellowship, Kathy Kim and Ashley Solaro of the Finance Leaders Fellowship, Stacy Zimmerman of Henry Crown, Alejandra Fonseca of Cali, Sam Cherry and Osaze Wilson of the Action Forum Intern Group, and Christian Devers, who led the youth camp. There we are. Great. Thank you all. You know, none of this could have happened without them. Thanks, guys. And there are a couple that I do want to mention who can't be here. We have lost two fellows that have passed away since our last time together. The Liberty Fellow, Mark Kent, and Africa Leadership Initiative from East Africa, fellow Hildegard Mizire. So they're missed deeply by families and friends and by all of our fellows. So let me just take a few minutes just to share some comments. Our theme, of course, has been fearless leadership. And over the past few days, we've tried to push you to take stock of your lives, to consider what it takes to cultivate courage, to explore what it means to be fearless in your own lives, and finally this afternoon, to think about where it all takes you. What's next? We've shared our experiences, our fears, our challenges, and in many cases, deeply personal stories. The workshops and topical dialogues have highlighted the extraordinary depth of experiences and work that you all are doing. And personally, I've been overwhelmed by the honesty, courage, and overall commitment you bring in trying to address the difficult problems facing you as individuals, in your professional lives, as citizens, and simply as people who care about our shared future. I leave this week with a great sense of humility in face of all that you do, adults, young adults, and youth, for the future despite the problems we face. So where do we go from here? We know that we're part of a world that poses immense challenges, so let me just try to connect a few dots. The first dot is the Aspen Institute. And like many of you, the Aspen Institute is at an inflection point. And Dan has shared his insights into how he's thinking about the Institute as he develops and shapes its purpose and vision for the years ahead. Second dot is our Aspen Global Leadership Network. AGLN is doing the same thing, considering not just what we are, but what we can become over the next decade and beyond. The impact we, through you, and the thousands who will follow you, can have. Here, we, the AGLN, have a chance to practice what we preach, to look both inside and outside and consider how we raise the bar on ourselves in order that we remain relevant, impactful, and of even greater significance in the future. So our process will be honest and open, and over the next few months, we will invite your input and engagement. Now, as fellows, you have all experienced an exploration of your own leadership and have found or are finding your footing. The Aspen experience is unlike any other. We don't offer the standard how-to manual on leadership. Ours is based on the moral foundation and ethics of citizenship. It starts with the premise that we are all human beings, we care, and we have the privilege of education, success, access, and resources. It also comes from a commitment to improve our world and a strong sense of responsibility to proactively engage. And in this complex and often troubling world in which we live, it requires courage combined with action, a kind of fearless leadership. In the memorable words of Goethe, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. So the next dot on the page is our own. It starts with us as individuals. You have in the Summit magazine the oft-cited quote of Dr. Margaret Mead, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." It does start with an individual, and it most often starts with small steps. Now, some of you know my story. I remember as a child supporting my mother, who is president of the League of Women Voters of Connecticut, to help get out the vote. I will never forget vote yes for Proposition number 9 as I stuffed envelopes and put up posters. I have no idea what Proposition number 9 was all about, but I was committed to getting out the vote. My mother followed in the footsteps of her mother, who served as president of the League of Women Voters of the United States and ended up advising 4 presidents on women's matters. Later, as a teenager, Once I got my driver's license, my mother had me do various jobs for her. And one was to drive her boss to meetings or to a location where she would give a speech. You can imagine how thrilled I was with this assignment. Given my new mobility, it inevitably interfered with my important plans. But those hours in the car led to conversation about the importance of believing in yourself, of finding one's passion, and of developing a peripheral vision or systems view so as to see the whole and therefore better understand the piece that excited me. We talked about how to be effective, how to have impact, and how asking the right questions was more important than having the answers yourself. These hours driving Margaret Mead were a gift that, at the time, I didn't know I was receiving. She was a remarkable woman who believed in the energy and potential of young people. And while some of us can lose sight of our path from time to time, she seemed to have a 4-lane highway to common sense and an envious clarity of purpose. It wasn't until years later, as I gained my own self-confidence and found my way, that I realized the impact she had on me. Dr. Mead believed in the power of one, the individual. But she also believed that one person, while the necessary catalyst, could not do it alone. Which takes me to our fellowship network. The dots we now need to connect are my dot, your dot, and your dot, and your dot. The example of Diane and Ura coming together as a Henry Crown Fellow and a Kali Fellow that we heard about to look at Nicaragua, done literally within 24 hours, building that momentum, is exactly what we need to be doing, as Dan and others have noted. And in this way, we move from the power of one to the power of many, to the collective that is our Aspen Global Leadership Network. So it's time for us to exercise our fearless leadership, both individually and collectively, in support of each other. The conductor, Ben Zander, tells a story about the great German conductor Herbert von Karajan, who, after a rehearsal, jumped into his car and told his driver to go, go, go. And the perplexed driver responded, "Yes, sir, but where?" And von Karajan answered, "It doesn't matter. They need me everywhere." Well, our world needs you everywhere. And you are active everywhere. And I'm honored to be associated with you, with every one of you. Thank you, Dan, for your passion, your vision, and commitment in leading us all forward, and for giving me the opportunity to serve. And most importantly, I thank all of you for who you are, what you do, for committing as you do to action, and for the privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of this community. Thank you.
And that concludes this evening's program. For all the adults, the party will get started as you walk over to the Isaacson Center. And if all of the campers can hang tight here with your counselors and teachers. Thanks so much.